And welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Sperging Out Podcast. My name is Mitch Grace. I am the author of the book Growing Up with Asperger's, Lessons Learned and Shareable Wisdom on Amazon, available right now in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook formats. And I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Extraordinaire.
Hello, I'm a therapist that does in-home therapy for adults with autism, and I'm happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you as well. And last episode, we were discussing why autistic people like Sonic the Hedgehog, and we're going to continue with that segment, why autistic people like blank. And just like we teased in the last episode, we're going to talk about why autistic people like trains.
So yeah, it's like a pretty well-known stereotype that people with autism like trains. But it's not just a stereotype. I've experienced it firsthand. I have clients who like trains. I know a lot of older people who are also on the autism spectrum, some of which have not been diagnosed, also just really like model trains. But as a professional in the field, I don't actually know why people with autism are attracted to trains. Sonic makes sense to me. I can see all the features, but trains I never really understood.
So, two big reasons. One, conceptually, trains are very easy to grasp. They have tracks. That's the only thing those are on. The trains are on. They go forward, they go backwards, they push, they pull. And if they carry cargo, sometimes they carry passengers. If they're not doing any of those things, something's wrong. Or maybe it's just standing still on the track. There are diesel trains, there are steam trains that get their steam from coal, and they light the coal on fire. So conceptually, they're very easy to grasp. And then the second reason is exposure. I think you'd be hard pressed to be in a place on the planet where there isn't a train somewhere. Like, you are going to encounter a train at some point, whether you're in Latin America, Africa, Asia, Europe, or North America, or Australia. You're going to encounter a train of some form or fashion. So, and on top of that, a lot of kids are introduced to trains through the children's book series and movies and TV show Thomas the Tank Engine. And Thomas the Tank Engine has a very similar thing with Sonic in the fact that they all have the characters have their own colors.
Yeah.
They all have their own body shapes.
They're anthropomorphized and have faces.
Yes, kind of. And then they all have their distinct personalities and whatnot. So that drags people in. And then an autistic person could be like, well, hang on, Thomas is what kind of train? Let me look that up. Oh, this big engine is what kind of train? Let me look that up. And then it just goes on from there.
Rabbit hole. Okay, yeah, I never actually made the connection with Thomas the Tank Engine, to be honest. I've never met anyone who actually likes Thomas the Tank Engine, the show. I watched it. I think I watched it a couple times as a kid, but it always creeped me out. I know their faces are uncanny. They're not cute and cartoony like Sonic. They're kind of scary.
Yeah, from what I remember, there are definitely some instances where the faces are unintentionally terrifying. So with trains, so you get exposed to trains. You get exposed to trains just by your real life or the children's program, and of the fact that they're very conceptually easy to grasp. And so also with the Thomas the Tank Engine show and books is that the author, Reverend Audrey, he was a real life train enthusiast, and so he incorporated real world English, Welsh, Scottish train history into his stories.
Oh, okay.
And so the location where all of his characters are, they would often go to mainland England and whatnot, and he would interact with trains over there. And then he would introduce real world engines into his stories. Like I think the most famous one is Flying Scotsman. He's in like a few stories. And so, by injecting that real world history into his show about fictional trains, it gets kids thinking, well, hold on, what's that? What's Flying Scotsman?
It's something they introduce as a kid, so it becomes that comfort feeling, that nostalgia.
And then it piques a kid's curiosity, and then they start researching, genuine train history, and then they're hooked.
Okay.
It provides them a rabbit hole to explore.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I always, when it came to like older people who still like trains and model trains, I always associate it because, with nostalgia, because there was this period of American history where it was really common for Christmas to buy train sets or to set up train sets.
Yeah.
And a
Yep.
lot of children did that. So I assumed as they grew older, it was nostalgia. It was that comfort thing. It's like when I was a kid during Christmas, I would build this train set. So I'm going to do that as an adult because it makes me feel good.
Yeah, I had a train set like that.
Yeah, I know my dad had a train set. I never saw him put it together. I just know he had it in a box.
So you mentioned model trains earlier. I don't know. I don't know how many of the model train community consists of autistic adults and whatnot. But if I were to guess, for me personally, I don't have any model train sets. I don't really have a very strong desire to build a model train set or little location. But like, have you seen like those huge model train sets where it's like a genuine like, oh, there's a mountain, there's a town, there's
Yes.
roads and whatnot.
Yeah, one of my family members, gosh, I want to say he was an uncle, but I can't remember. It's been so long. He had a massive train set in his living room like that, decked out. It was really cool, but it was still a train set. So
Yeah. So I think the appeal there is that like you get to create your own world. Like you get to create a village, you get to create a rail line, a rail, loop that the trains go on. You get to build it yourself. So if you want something to So if you want this, like, oh, this thing needs a post office. I need a station here. I want the train to go through a tunnel right here. And
Yeah, it's
whatnot.
almost like city planning a little bit.
Yeah, city
like creating
planning.
your own little world, and it's more interactive than just creating a model town. Because once you create the model town, it's just an empty town.
Yeah,
So at least the train does something.
yeah, exactly. And then this lends itself to like model airports as well, which I think are also cool because trains to go on the tracks. Whereas model planes, you have they have the little device that kind of makes them go off.
Yeah, they like lift off and then come back
up.
down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen those rarely.
That, and it's just for me personally, just watching a model train just run around. It's just soothing. Like it's a thing. I know exactly where it's gonna go. I know exactly what it's gonna do. It's just calming.
That makes sense. A lot of the people I work with, a lot of people I've interacted with who have autism, like routines a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that the train only goes in the track and the pattern it's clearly predestined to go can be comforting. Plus the sound of it hitting the rungs of the track. Like just being on a train and hearing that is kind of soothing.
Yeah, it's kind of like a metronome, like you see on pianos. Like the tick tock and whatnot. And so, and it's just, interesting. It's just neat.
Okay,
It's just neat.
I'm starting to see why people on the spectrum would be more interested in trains.
That and trains are also huge.
Yeah,
Like
and there's a lot of history behind trains too,
Yeah.
like a lot to read about.
Oh yeah, a lot of history to read about trains, and trains themselves are just huge, massive machines and whatnot. And so like they have these giant wheels and these rods that kind of make them go up and make them spin, and they have smokestacks that blow a lot of smoke and steam and whatnot. They have horns that make deep noises and whatnot, and they go. And they start slowly, but once they pick up speed, they can go very fast, and that's cool to look at.
Okay.
This giant piece of machinery going that fast, carrying all that weight.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. It's also why I've noticed that like the people who really like trains like those older trains too. Mm-hmm. I very rarely see someone being like, "Man, I love my model subway train of the New York Metro system."
Yeah.
Not really the same.
Yeah, the diesel trains are not as, I guess, magical, for lack of a term, than
less nostalgia.
Yeah.
And modern train tracks are also super complicated and go to a billion places.
Yeah. Like they serve a function. They very much serve a function. But in terms of, a lot of different reasons to like trains. But trains are not the only vehicles that that autistic people tend to gravitate towards.
So the other two that I've seen are cars and airplanes, which I guess are obvious. Those are the primary modes of transportation we have. Mm-hmm. With cars, I've seen a lot of obsession over like old original like Ford models.
Yeah.
Plus some newer ones that have almost a romantic. I don't know how to put it. A romantic view. So like
romanticized view?
Jeep Wranglers from the 1970s.
Really?
You know those older, bigger steel vehicles that like
The Volkswagen bus.
grease monkeys like to work on and fix them.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people with autism really obsess over them too because I guess maybe they're mechanical. The romanticization of them, plus the fact that they're mechanically, you can interact with the mechanics, whereas modern cars are way too complicated and dense and are designed for you to not be able to look under the hood and do stuff really.
Right.
Whereas if you go to an old, Jeep Wrangler, you can take the whole thing apart and put it back together.
You could. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you could.
Well, I know people who have just to
Wow.
fix things and tune it up. It's
Something
like a
to do.
hobby.
Yeah, and then there are certain autistic people that like to work with their hands, and what better way than just to get them mechanically used to putting together and taking apart a car, because that's just a practical skill to have, and as well, even with modern cars, you apply those skills towards like basic car repair of the car you own.
Yeah. And then there's airplanes.
Yes, so please, the floor is yours.
Airplanes. I love airplanes. It's not a secret.
Floor is yours. Take it away.
Airplanes are a different kind of beast because, well, it depends on the airplane. If you're talking about like passenger airplanes or civilian aircraft, it's probably about the same energy as like old Jeeps and trains, where it's like there's a nostalgia to it and they're just like neat. Whereas like modern military jets or modern planes are very complex, and the people who fly them are turbo nerds. So like, I have a friend who's a jet pilot, and when we talk, he talks about deflection angles of his plane and the max speed it can go. Like, he knows every mathematical related formula, number related to this plane. Like, it's very autism spectrumy, where it's like you have memorized every detail humanly imaginable about this plane. So you know exactly the angle you're allowed to turn the plane to deflect. You know the exact speed it maxes out at before the frame starts to bend. Things like that. So I think planes themselves lend themselves to autism very well because of that necessary knowledge that you need to know to be a good pilot. Even passenger planes, there's a lot of bells and whistles and knobs and things you need to understand. Like,
Yeah.
I have a friend who flies passenger planes as well, and like him just trying to explain to me how there's a knob you pull to change the throttle, the speed of the plane, and how it mechanically works, because you have to know how it mechanically works to understand like if there's ever a malfunction, what you need to do with this knob. Like if you pull it all the way back or push it all the way forward,
Is this person who I think it is, our mutual friend?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of details you need to know to be a good pilot. And so people with autism tend to be really good at memorizing facts. And
Yes.
those are exactly what they are, memorizing a lot of facts. And routines. There's a lot of routines when it comes to flying a plane. You follow an exact routine every time you get in the plane, every time you start the plane, every time you take off.
Exactly. And then something else that dawned on me when you were discussing this is that another reason why autistic people tend to gravitate towards those different vehicles, especially with trucking as well, is because as technology has advanced, so have simulations. There are flight simulations, there are train simulations, trucking simulations that you can get for your PC if you have one, and it runs you through all that. You have to be you have to know how to operate this thing, and there's an entire sub culture, I guess, of fans that not all of them are autistic, obviously, but that just love simulations. And so the fact that you can actually get into this game and actually try to fly a plane and you can role play as an actual pilot, it lends itself to those that I don't want to say obsess over, but have a strong
inclination towards it. Yeah, because like I love airplanes and military jet planes specifically, and I'm never going to be able to fly one. Hopefully not. If the military lets me into an F-18, you call the cops. Like, if something bad's happened. But like I love playing the simulator on my PC. I love flying those planes. There's something about just being up in the sky and going fast that's really enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite bits of Red Dead Redemption 2, I can't remember if this is a side mission or a main mission, but your character Arthur Morgan does get to control a train at some point.
Yeah.
And then you're just driving this train down the track across the area of Red Dead 2, and at the very end, your character Arthur, or maybe John, spoilers, for a multi-year-old game. The NPC that either John or Arthur is with says, hey, what'd you think of it? And then Arthur or John says, well, that was kind of fun. And I'm just like that. They wrote that line for like the inner the inner child and all of us. They're like, hey, that'd be kind of cool to like control train for a bit and like old timey Western stuff.
Yeah, and for all the vehicles we're talking about, there's this intrinsic joy to driving them. Just something about having like control over this machine feels good.
Yeah.
Even just driving like a normal car.
Yeah.
Like there's that moment when you're zooming down the highway at 40 or 60 or 70 or 80, and you're like, this feels good. Or when you change lanes, when you do it perfectly and you just smoothly transition from one to the other, some part of your lizard brain's like, hell yeah, brother.
Or like when you're turning right at a red light and you like don't overshoot it, you're perfectly within like the lane boundaries. I'm like, ooh, I feel like I just did a puzzle and I didn't realize it.
There's something enjoyable, and that applies to all vehicles.
Yeah, like I remember this one time I was in college, and so I've driven mini SUVs my entire life, and I intend to do that for the rest of my life because they're good cars. But I had to drive.
Soccer mom.
What?
I said soccer mom. Yeah.
Oh, the irony of that statement. But but at one point I had to drive someone's Ford Raptor pickup truck. If you don't know what these things are big, thick pickup trucks. This is 2014. You don't see them a whole lot anymore, but these are more like these are big pickup trucks. And so when I turned on the engine and I heard that pickup truck engine rev, I'm like, oh, that feels nice. And then you got to I wasn't used to the controls, but so I tried my best to like really feel, okay, the brakes are this sensitive. I need to be this sensitive with the throttle, and I need to be very aware of my surroundings because I'm driving a truck, not a SUV. But there's just something cathartic about it. It's like, ooh, I feel powerful. Like you feel the vision is higher up because you have to step into the truck, not getting into it and whatnot. So it's just
sitting in taller vehicles also just, I don't know, something about it makes you feel good too.
Mm-hmm. And then I can't imagine what that feeling feels like whenever you're inside a train, you hear the engine start to hum, or a plane, or you feel the jet start to turn on like high and whatnot, and I just I get it. I get the exhilaration behind it.
Oh man, I'm just thinking of airplanes. Yeah,
right?
I could. It's exhilarating to fly an airplane real fast. At least in simulators.
Would you ever want to go to like a military base and be like, hey, take me up on a test pilot?
100%. Immediately, I would jump on that opportunity.
I mean, I think there's a place. I know there's an air base in Fort Worth. I don't know if they do test or if they do passenger pilot flights though.
I don't think so. I mean, the last time I ever heard of anyone getting like passenger fun rides on military vehicles was like the shooting of the Mission Impossible films.
Or Top Gun.
Yeah, and they pay. Oh, Top Gun. You're right. My bad. Not Mission Impossible.
Yeah, Top Gun Maverick.
Tom Cruise. Spent a bajillion dollars getting the rights to do that. So I'm not sure if there's places that just let you take joyrides.
Well, I mean, not as joyrides.
There's definitely like there's places. There used to be places before COVID that let you fly in, World War II and older planes, and then there's definitely places that let you joyride civilian aircraft. I mean, just go to Southwest Airlines or any airline,
Right. But I think with the World War II plane, I know what you're talking about because it's nearby, let's say.
Yeah.
And I think that happened because there was a crash, and then the FAA came down and said, "Nope, you're grounded."
Yeah, the FAA came down on everyone in the United States and was like, "Okay, everyone, I know we all love flying these old World War II planes, but they're old and dangerous." We don't want any more crashes.
Yeah, we don't want any more people to die.
Yeah.
So,
which is fair.
Can't
blame them.
It's a reasonable response.
They still let helicopters fly. Those things are death traps.
Yeah, helicopters, man. Helicopters. Have you noticed any obsessions with helicopters in the same way with planes?
No, not really. Actually, not even online.
Really?
I mean, I'm in a lot of aircraft communities because I love airplanes, and there are people who do like helicopters for sure. But they're definitely a minority. And it may be just something to do with the way a helicopter functions. They're not sleek or smooth. They're very turbulent. I mean, that's how they fly. They fly through pure turbulence. An airplane uses all of the ingenuity of mankind and aerodynamics and our understanding of physics to fly. A helicopter is just what if we pushed air down real hard? Just dumb energy, so...
Yeah, rotor ring aircraft.
Which is why helicopters are actually very hard to fly. Much harder than an airplane, actually.
Oh, 100% they are. 100% they are. I've heard someone say that the first thing they teach you in helicopter flight school is that they give you a pencil and a ball, and you have to balance the ball on the pencil. And of course, everyone fails the first time, but it's like,
Yeah.
hey, like this is what it's like flying a helicopter.
Yeah, they're like it's real tough.
So kudos to the helicopter pilots out there.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, I think I was also thinking of like historical context for maybe why people like these things, because trains were a massive industrial revolution for everyone. I mean, it was a humongous leap forward for transporting goods and pretty much all of society, all of humanity. And then there were cars, which same thing again. Just the technological advancement advanced everyone's lives almost immediately. And same with airplanes. Helped with globalization and global transport. Each of these kind of represent a step of humanity becoming more interconnected and more capable. And the ingenuity, the technology went into them for the times in which they were made were all, cutting edge.
exactly. It's like, what if we made a steam engine, but we put it on wheels? And what if we made it huge?
Yeah.
And then what if we put people on it? And, like you can see the logic behind it. Same with like the planes. It's like, I want to be in the air, but because I need to be able to cross an ocean that's not a ship.
Yeah, I mean, like the first planes were essentially glorified paper airplanes with propellers.
Yeah, like the Wright brothers.
Yeah, and now we have,
Jumbo.
F-18 jet planes that can do the most insane things you've ever seen.
And 747s.
Yeah, and there's massive planes that, again, are just almost wonders in their own size, their ability.
Yeah, part of me does want to fly on like a double-decker jumbo jet at some point, just to experience it.
Boeing actually has, they have a new civilian plane that uses carbon fiber single-piece wings.
Was this before or after they started assassinating people?
This was actually before.
Okay.
But the problem is they've had these planes made for like I want to say it's like 7 years now. And the FAA just keeps not approving them, and they're like just sitting on these like massive planes they use less fuel, they're lighter, they're easier to take care of, they're brand new, so they're not falling apart. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And they're humongous. They're like just an objective upgrade to everything we currently have.
Why is the FAA shooting it down?
I don't know, but they probably have a good reason.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit here and judge the FAA and say it's some conspiracy. There's probably a really good reason. But yeah, it's just neat because the Boeing factory in I can't remember where it is, but you can see photos of these planes and they're massive.
Wow.
And it's crazy how big they can get. It's kind of like you were saying with trains. Like large train is very impressive.
Yeah, I also love one of my favorite. My favorite plane in existence is, have you heard of the Spruce Goose?
Spruce Goose, that sounds familiar. I think I have.
So the Spruce Goose was a massive, intended to be military transport plane that Howard Hughes invented.
Oh, yes, I know what you're talking about now.
It had like 6 engines. Its hull, I guess body, I don't know what the term is, hull?
Yeah.
So yeah, the hull was massive. Like you could fit, I don't want to sell it, but you could definitely fit like a few tanks in there. And it was meant to take off and land in water. And it only flew once. Because it was, I think this is towards the end of Howard Hughes' life. And I guess it was like so impractical that the military was like, no thanks.
Yeah, it's one of those situations.
But as a publicity stunt, Howard Hughes was like, I'm going to fly this plane. And it's going to be airborne. And I'm going to land it. And that's exactly what the bastard did. If you've heard of the movie The Aviator with Leonardo DiCaprio, they show that.
Oh, okay.
And then if you want video games, get the complete edition of LA Noire. There's a DLC mission that's not in the main story where you can see the Spruce Goose.
Yes, I do remember that. Okay. It reminds me of the, this is not really the same, maybe sort of the same. There's the, I can't remember. It was a passenger plane primarily used in the UK that was supersonic. And that was its whole shtick, is that unlike...
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
I can visualize it. Unlike passenger planes now that are subsonic, these are supersonic, so you could get anywhere twice as fast. Except they were complete and utter death traps.
Yeah.
Because making a plane supersonic requires really fine-tuned engineering, and everything has to fit just right. Anything slightly wrong causes it to just like peel right off the plane.
And then people die.
Yeah, so they flew these for a couple years until people were like, these things are death traps, and they cost too much money to make.
Yes.
But I want to say there was another company recently, a private company, that was looking into doing supersonic passenger planes again.
Was it Lockheed Martin?
I couldn't tell you. I don't remember. But that would be interesting to see.
Right.
If it's safe, obviously.
Of course, if it's safe. I'm not not getting on a supersonic plane. That just sounds dangerous.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, if there's some dangerous idea, someone will try to make it. I mean, Ospreys exist, the vertical takeoff helicopter / airplanes.
Exactly.
Which is a terrible idea, just to put it out there.
Like the Ospreys, I think that's what they're called.
Yeah, there were so many accidents during the development, and like just the concept alone, you're like, this is just way too complicated and dangerous.
Like
everything that makes a helicopter fly stable doesn't work well on an airplane, and everything that makes an airplane fly well doesn't work well on a helicopter. So trying to put them together is just not a good idea.
Yeah, like I get the idea, but I get what they were going for. Like they want to take a rotor-winged aircraft and turn it into a fixed-wing aircraft and vice versa. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. So I mean, they look cool. The Ospreys look cool.
It was a really cool idea. I feel like that's a lot of technology. It's just really cool ideas. That, once they start trying to make them, they're like, oh, these are terribly impractical, actually.
Right. So there's an aspect of aircraft that I don't know how much autistic people like it, but I myself like it. Zeppelins.
Oh,
I love Zeppelins.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that is definitely common within autism communities.
That does not surprise me.
Zeppelins and hot air balloons are very popular.
I get it. They are huge. They go up in the air. They are cool. I read somewhere that there is a company in Germany that will take you up on an air ride in a Zeppelin, and I've told my significant other, sweetheart, if we ever go to Germany, we're doing this, and if you don't want to go, that's fine. I'm going up there.
It's called the Hindenburg. It'll be great. I'm sorry, I had to.
I think because I think we're not in danger of a Hindenburg happening again because they switched from hydrogen to helium.
Yeah, they don't use super highly flammable gases anymore for good reason.
Right. So
I've been in a hot air balloon. Have you been in a hot air balloon before?
I haven't. Wait, you have?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It was like I was younger and they were doing it in my hometown as like a thing. And you just flew around a bit and then went back down. It was no big deal. I didn't like it.
Not a fan?
It's loud.
Yeah.
Hot air balloons are really loud. You don't think about it, but the thing that the fire.
Yep.
And then just the air.
Yep.
And it's just like, oh yeah, this is weird. Also, it's like oddly warm. I think it's because of the fire. It just isn't. It wasn't very comfortable.
Oh, well, good to know.
So take that, hot air balloon fans.
Yeah, yes.
Hot take, not my favorite.
Would you ever go in a Zeppelin, though?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would, too.
I've never been on one, I don't even think I've ever even seen one in person. I would love to get on one.
I don't know if I've seen one in person, but like in football games, they'll occasionally show like the MetLife blimp and whatnot with Snoopy on it. And I looked into it. Count. And I looked into it. Apparently, the company only takes up like high-end investors on the Zeppelins. I'm like, that is bullshit. Yeah. I would pay MetLife how much money to go up in that Zeppelin? Like, come on, man. But I do understand why Zeppelins aren't as popular back then. Even as a business, like it would be difficult to make a profitable business on Zeppelin rides because forget the public stigma about it. About the Hindenburg, kind of like Chernobyl and nuclear energy, but helium is very expensive compared to hydrogen. So it'd be very difficult to sell that idea. But like you mentioned, the romanticization of a certain time period regarding certain vehicles and whatnot. One of the reasons I love the video game Battlefield 1 so much is that they're at the same time you have Zeppelins, dreadnoughts, and ships that look like the Titanic, when the large smokestacks and everything, and trains. Steam trains were still used back then. And that's all in the same time zone. So I'm like, yes, absolutely.
That is a weird convergence of things. Yeah, never thought about that.
Like, absolutely, yes, give me more of that, please. And so, there's, again, that goes into the rabbit hole. You think of the time period when those were a thing, and then you think about it further, and then like, oh, what? Zeppelins really were used during World War II. They were armored trains, dreadnoughts. What are those? Yeah. Wait, so the ship that looks just like that Titanic was a hospital ship during World War I? What's this?
Yeah, a lot of cool history to learn.
Exactly. And then you're like, well, hang on. The trains were built by this company. Well, other trains did this company build? They built that train. What? And it just keeps going and going and going and going and going and going and going.
I just realized I've never interacted with someone who's like really obsessed about boats or submarines though. I mean, submarines make sense. They're like really expensive and they're like real scary.
Yeah.
Like even the safest submarine, I'm like, check me outside. I ain't getting in that thing.
Mm-hmm.
But boats, I mean, I know people who really like boats, but none of them have seemed like autism obsessive about it. They just own a boat and like having a boat.
I've seen people, like, there's a whole community that loves researching the Titanic disaster.
Oh, yes. Well, that one's a big deal because of the movies and because of the history behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then shipwrecks in general. There's a whole subject of like, okay, why, this ship that should be above water is now at the bottom of the ocean. Why? And that it encourages intrigue and it's interesting because like, okay, Titanic, okay, it hit an iceberg, broke in two. The Britannic hit a mine, sank immediately. Lusitania got torpedoed, and what was another we had a shipwreck about a decade ago off the coast of Italy.
Oh, I don't know.
The Costa Concordia.
Oh yes.
And like 20 people died and whatnot.
Yeah.
And like what happened there? Incompetence, and then the ship had a rock.
Yeah, there's also that morbidity that comes with it, like
True.
The morbid curiosity, I guess would be the right way to put it.
Yeah.
Same reason people like watching documentaries about serial killers.
Yeah.
There's a show on Netflix actually. It's all about airplane crashes.
They
go through why airplanes crash, and it turns out like 90% of the time it's because the pilot's a dummy. 99% of the time it's because the pilot was like, hey, what if I tilted the plane a little further than it can tilt? Oh, it flipped over, we crashed. And you're like, yeah, that's what happens.
There's
you guys are morons.
There was a whole show that was about train crashes and why
train crashes.
Yeah,
really?
why did this train crash? Why did it kill so many people? Why did this happen and whatnot? And they would show the crashes and like and they would have dioramas. It's like, okay, so like there was a break in, like, so the rails like bent because of the heat, and then the train went wee and then blew up.
Oh,
and
okay.
So like, and then of course this also, to tie this back into Thomas the Tank Engine, I mean, there were crashes in that show.
Yes.
The trains crashed, and they were treated seriously, like
people getting injured because they are people in the show.
Yeah, so like people do get hurt, and like the trains, these are massive machines, and they are crashed into things. It's not like whoops, the guy's slipping out of a banana peel. It's like, no, like this caused a massive amount of destruction. Yeah. So I'm sure at some point we're gonna have to do an episode on why autistic people like Thomas the Tank Engine. So
I think we already covered it essentially. It's essentially a combination of Sonic and trains, right? I mean, what we just talked about in the last 2 episodes. Not literally Sonic and trains. I also don't know anything about Thomas the Tank Engine other than like references to in the movie Bullet Train.
I didn't see Bullet Train.
Oh, it's very good. There's one of the characters' joke is that he categorizes people's personalities based on Thomas the Tank Engine characters.
Are you kidding me?
So there's one part where he goes, "You're being a bit of a diesel." So it just became a funny thing to call someone a diesel to be like, you're kind of mean.
Which character was it?
It's a black guy.
Brian
English,
Terry Henry's character?
Bigger. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about. Yep. I haven't seen the movie, but I know exactly who you're talking about.
He's like the best character in the movie. That movie's very funny.
All right, Bullet Train. So not only did you learn about trains, but you have a movie recommendation, Bullet Train. There you are. Was there anything else you wanted to discuss regarding trains? Planes or automobiles or boats?
I don't think so. I think we really went over like every vehicle, didn't we?
Yep. And then, I mean, there are a lot of communities you can join that talk about
like
subreddits,
if you're obsessed with
Facebook
any of these
things.
things, there's no stigma against being obsessed about these things. There's fan groups for all of these.
Yeah, there's not nearly as much negative stigma with being obsessed over like vehicles as there is like, Sonic the Hedgehog. So
yeah, it's because one's like a cartoon, and like, no one's gonna be like, you like trains? It's not like they revolutionized all of humanity,
right?
Like obviously everyone likes trains.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, liking trains. We went over why people do it, and there's no reason to. Well, there's nothing wrong with liking trains, planes, automobiles, and whatnot, and boats. So
they're all super cool.
This has been another episode of the Sperging Out Podcast. My name is Mitch Grace. I am the author of the book Growing Up with Asperger's, Lessons Learned and Shareable Wisdom on Amazon in paperback, audiobook, and Kindle formats. And I'm joined as always by my co-host, Extraordinaire.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
And we will see you in the next episode. Thank you.